I'm PFC James Balcer, United States Marines, Vietnam 1968 to 1969, also a former alderman with the city of Chicago. I'm here with my dear friend, Tom Ryan. He headed up Local 2 with the fire department for a number of years. He was a fireman for how many years now?
32.
32 years. We're here to talk about 9/11. But before we start, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tom, welcome to my house.
Thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you here. I've known you for
20 years.
Yes, 20 years. 20 years at least, and I've always been impressed with your work as a fireman.
Thank you.
What you've done with the union, everything that you've done is so important to the city of Chicago, rescuing people, putting out fires, but we're here mainly to talk about 9/11 and your experience as a fireman. If you could go into that, please.
Well, I'll never forget it as long as I live, and I'm sure most Americans will never forget what they felt that day. I happened to be sitting at home, laying in bed, trying to get myself up to go out for a run, and my phone rang, and one of my partners over at the firehouse, and he said, turn on the TV. He says, the world's ending. And I thought, I'm like, what? You know, I didn't know what he was talking about. And he says, you got to turn on the TV. And Michael Jordan had just announced his return to basketball. And I thought that's what that was about. All of a sudden I flip on the TV and I see what's going on. And obviously I witnessed it with millions of Americans and people around the world firsthand what happened. And, you know, as a firefighter, watching that and then watching those towers collapse, I knew the way New York fought fires because they fight fires the same way we do. They were in that building. There were hundreds of them in that building. And when it came down, I knew what happened. They were all dead.
They were going up. They knew that the danger was imminent.
They absolutely knew it.
And never thought about, you know, hey, I'm not going up into that building. Oh my God, it's going to collapse. They still went up and did
They went up and did their job, did their duty, which was they were supposed to do, and they did it to the bitter end.
And that's so heroic. And how is it, your experiences here in Chicago, we talked about you being a roof man and you having to fight fires on the roof. How did that, could you explain that and go about it?
Well, I mean, there's different, it's kind of technical. I'll just go briefly on this. A roof, you know, there's really two main components to firefighting. It's obviously the rescue portion of it and then the extinguishment. The extinguishment is the engine. They carry the hose, they put the water, as we say in the business, they put the wet stuff on the red stuff, in other words. But the truckman, the hook and ladder truck person, is in charge of not only search and rescue, but also ventilation. They have to get into that building above the fire, either on the roof or above the fire in an apartment building, to release the heat, to allow the engine to get in, because it's 1,500 degrees in there. No human being can survive it. You got to let that heat out to let the engine get in and put the fire out.
And these roofs we're talking about, peak roofs.
There's peak roofs, there's flat roofs, there's all kinds of roofs.
There's all kinds of roofs.
But the peak roofs probably present the most difficulty, especially in the winter.
Why is that?
Because of the snow and ice.
The snow and ice,
and
the
it's slippery, and we had a good friend of mine fell off almost a 3-story building once, and he's still 20 years later feeling the effects of it. Had to leave the job, the whole bit, you know. So
and
it's dangerous.
It's dangerous. Didn't we have a couple of firemen killed on 9/11 or December 22nd? I can't remember. We were having a ceremony.
Yes, actually, we were heading to the Stockyard Memorial, which, if most people don't know, before 9/11, the Stockyard Memorial was the largest single loss of life of firefighters' lives in U.S. history.
And that's 21 firemen were killed.
Correct.
Along with 3 civilians.
Yes, and that's when a portion of a wall collapsed during a fire in the stockyards.
That was 1910.
1910, and up until that time, there had never been a loss of life that big as far as firefighting is concerned. So that was unfortunately a record that we held, and I was on my way on December 22nd to go to a memorial for the Stockyard, you know, at the Stockyard Memorial, when I got a call from Father Tom O'Crone, who was our chaplain at the time, to say that there had been a building collapse at 75th Street and that firemen were trapped. So I headed straight there, got there before they had gotten everybody out, and unfortunately lost Eddie Stringer and I'm drawing a blank here. Corey.
We lost him.
Corey Aiken. Corey Aiken.
Okay.
I couldn't remember his last name. Corey Aiken. And we lost those two firemen. Eddie was a veteran. Corey was a candidate. I mean, he was a newbie, and he lost his life. It just goes to show you how quickly it can happen.
Because it's the danger, as I said, is imminent, and fires are scary. My one brother, deceased John, was burned up in Vietnam, so I know about fires.
It's horrific.
The pain you go through with skin grafts and all
debris
of that.
and everything. Debris is where they remove the burned flesh and the burned skin, and it's not pretty, and it's incredibly painful.
That's why I give the firemen so much credit. I think my numbers here, and you can help me with this, 340 firemen were killed at 9/11?
343, correct.
343.
Many more died later because of illness afterwards, after the fact.
Now, you went to New York, am I right? You
Yes.
were in New York, and you were part of the cleanup.
Well, when we got there, we got there on the morning of September 13th. We drove all night. Remember, there were no planes.
Yeah.
So we got in a car, and 6 of us, I only knew 2 of them, and the other 3 we hadn't even met before. We all got in cars and drove, 1,000 miles to get to New York. It took us 16 hours to get there. Because of traffic, we got stuck in the Holland Tunnel or the Lincoln Tunnel in New York for a couple of hours. We couldn't get through. And then when we finally got there, we literally pulled up in front of a firehouse, grabbed our gear, got on a fire truck, and went to the scene. And he dropped us off about a block away. And it's about 5 o'clock in the morning at this point. The sun had just come up. There it is, it just started to come up. And we walked up there and we were speechless. I mean, what I saw to this day, I still can't describe, I still can't comprehend.
The
what I saw.
devastation,
It was
yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
It actually looked like a John Carpenter movie. It looked like a movie set. It did not look real, but it was.
God, what was your job there? What were you doing?
Well, when we first got there, we still thought that there was a chance of rescue. And as a matter of fact, we were digging right at the base of the Liberty Bank building. It's amazing. You've got all these technological advancements and everything else, and we were out there with buckets and gloves. That's what we were using. 5-gallon buckets just to fill up, move it, start moving it, look for people, and they had dogs out there, they had listening devices out there, and at one time, there was, we heard everyone screaming, stop, 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 quiet, quiet, because they had heard something. So they get the device down in there, and they hear to get the dog down there, and the dog is hitting. They actually pull a guy out, a fireman out, and everyone goes crazy. I mean, I still get goosebumps even thinking about that moment. Well, it turns out it wasn't as remarkable as everyone thought, miraculous as everyone thought. This was a fireman that had responded to the initial collapse and got lost, went in looking for people and got lost. So unfortunately, we knew after that point that we were pulling any survivors out of there. This was recovery.
There weren't any survivors.
There was no way.
God, that's incredible. It's
Not while we were there, so.
I mean, and to think that America came together at that time. America came together. You had everyone, whether they were what political party they were, or what color, or what race. Everyone was there to help. They were there to help there. They were there to help at the Pentagon, and we're at Shanksville, Pennsylvania. They were there to help. We came together at that time. And I give, how many firemen from Chicago volunteered?
That's hard to tell. I mean, we were the originals. There was a group that was originally sent out there officially by the Chicago Fire Department out there, and then subsequent groups followed. I don't want to get into how the politics of the whole thing, because quite honestly, at that point in time, politics had no business in the decision.
Yeah. No.
I was quite upset that they basically told us not to go because they were afraid of liability. Well,
God,
we've got Americans possibly buried, and you're worried about liability. Who's going to pay for it? I mean, it's just.
I'll never understand that at all. I never would. And then you have the number of these firemen, and I think have some numbers here. 72 law enforcement officers were
And
killed.
then you had port officer police.
Port officers, a lot of others, and also 55 military personnel were killed.
And that was more in the Pentagon.
In the Pentagon, when they slammed
Right.
into the Pentagon.
Right.
It boggles the mind how this all came about.
Well, I mean,
And that's,
we're seeing, and listen, there's nothing harder in the world than try to protect the nation, and I understand that, I get that. But it seems to be in that case, and then in more recent cases, the ball has been dropped. I mean, we are supposed to be better than that. We're supposed to know when this stuff is coming. That's why we pay the taxes we pay. That's why we have the army the size that we have, the Air Force, and, it's disappointing. I mean, unfortunately, you just have to look at the events of last week in Afghanistan. How could we be caught so unprepared? That's exactly what happened. And the one thing about 9/11 that really angered me, it's not that was the first time that they tried it.
right.
Most people don't understand it. They
tried
did this once before.
With the truth. Tom, this is phase one. We're going to hold off for a minute here and then we'll go to phase two. But before we do that, I want to thank my son Frank, who's sitting behind the camera doing the work, and my wife and my daughter. But Frank does all the work. Thanks,
Thank
Frank.
you, Frank.